Welcome to the Lampstand Chronicles. I'm your host, Rocky. I am still trying to figure out this intro. It is definitely a work in progress. Should I just keep saying welcome like how I've been saying it? Should I sing it like welcome? I don't know. You guys let me know what you think, if I should keep it or switch it up. But we have officially made it to episode 4. Wow. And as my husband would say, raise the roof. Speaking of my husband, I want to give him a special shout out. When I recorded this episode, it was the day of our 1-year anniversary, and wow, how fast a year has gone by. But in this whole process of starting this podcast, he's been my encourager. He's been my hype man behind the scenes. He gets me to not procrastinate. He just pushes me to just do bigger things and push myself. He's just been my biggest supporter, so I thank you. And I thank God that he's brought us together for such a time as this. Wow. But on to the episode at hand, because I'm excited about this one. And my guest today is Will, releasing music under the name Still. And he's not only singing on the tracks, but he's also writing and delving into the production side of things. Now, if you check out Still's Spotify or Apple Music page, you'll notice that there's only been 4 singles released. But don't let that deceive you. This is intentional, and we're talking about quality over quantity. And Will and I delve more into this topic in this episode. We also talked about the journey he took to officially release music, not being confined to a specific genre or sound, and the meaning behind some of the singles that have been released. But as you know, like any story, we have to go back to the beginning. So let's go.
You know, it's interesting because I grew up always singing, and having a passion for music. Played piano when I was young. Everybody does, it's kind of how it feels like. I'll start off playing piano.
Yes.
And I don't really know when that transition happened, but I know definitely I always kind of wrote music down, and back in the day, it's always kind of like you don't want to think about that anymore kind of thing. It's like embarrassing, but yeah, you got to start somewhere,
Yes.
But yeah, just kind of started writing and singing, and I wouldn't say it was until probably a few years ago I kind of got really serious about it. Me and a friend that she was on a couple of the songs that we did before. We kind of just decided like, hey, like, let's just go for it. Like if God's given us a gift and he's given us an opportunity to work together and to do it for his glory, like why are we waiting? Like why sit around and be like, oh, maybe one day, so it kind of just hit us like, let's just go for it. So we went for it.
Yeah. And in that process, or in that time, were you involved in music in any other way, i.e. your church, or just even like making music in your bedroom but not actually putting it out there? How did music kind of revolve in your life at that point?
Yeah, definitely. I was always kind of involved in musical things in school, like I did like choirs, and didn't really sing too much in church. I kind of went to bigger churches and stuff, and I actually moved around every couple of years growing up. And so it's kind of hard to find that involvement. Like, well, you could try, but you kind of had to work your way in. And by the time I had made my way in, it was like, well,
Get ready to leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely always was writing, by myself. And you know how it progresses from like, at first when you're younger, you're like writing about less important things, and as you kind of mature and you grow into your faith and stuff like that, kind of you feel more, it's all important because it's the stepping stones of where you get to, but
let's go back to your faith. Was that something that you always knew growing up? Because I think, like, for myself, I always grew up in church. I was always in church, but as far as developing my own faith, I didn't come to know that until like my 20s. So what was that like for you?
That's a great question. Yeah, growing up, I also grew up in like a Christian household, but I've always thought to myself, I wonder if, I mean, no fault to like my family or anything, but I wonder if that's almost like, what's the
It's kind
word?
of like a crutch, I feel like.
Exactly, 100%,
Yeah,
because it's like you grow up knowing it and always learning it, and so you don't have that passion almost. Do you know what I mean? Because
absolutely. Yeah.
people who find it later in life, they typically are in a worse spot, and then they find what they need, and they're more passionate about it. So it is tough, but I think God reveals Himself in so many different ways, and over time, He will show Himself in a way that you desperately attach to, and when you need Him most.
So when you were thinking about putting music out there, was there any point that you were fearful or doubtful in the whole process? Because that can be pretty scary for
Oh,
someone who hasn't done it
definitely.
before.
100%. Well, it's kind of like, I mean, you don't want to fail. Do you know what I mean? Like,
True.
you don't want to, which I mean, what is failing? Like if you're putting music out there for God, it's like He's going to bless it either way, whether people listen to it or not. Like, it could affect one person, and that could be his entire intention for it. But
Right.
definitely, you're apprehensive because you want to make sure that you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. I think that's one thing for me is like, I don't want to say I'm a perfectionist, but I definitely don't want to just pump out music. I definitely want it to be genuine, and I want to make sure that it's what God wants me to put out. So I think that it's important to take those steps to really hear from God and know that those songs that you're putting out are what He wants.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line between not putting your work out there and then putting
Mm-hmm.
your work out there because as you said, you don't want to put out just anything, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, you don't want that to hinder you not putting out
Exactly.
anything
What's the line?
because
Yeah.
exactly, because for me, like it's the same thing. I will go over every single detail to
Mm-hmm.
the point where it's just like, forget it. It's not going to work. It's not at the standard that I think it should be at. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, it's like, what does it mean to be perfect?
Exactly. And
Especially
I think,
like when it comes with our walk. I don't think there's no such thing as being
mhm.
perfect.
And I think for me, like something that I've learned over time is that God will use things in different times of your life. So like I know in the past I've started writing a song and then I've gotten really close to finishing it and I've been like, nah, scrap it. Like it's either not right or I'm not connecting to it or whatever. And then let's say a year or two later, I look back on it and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is hitting me now. Like that actually happened with my recent song Heavy.
Mm,
I actually started writing that song 2 years ago and I really liked it at the time, but I just didn't feel led to finish it. So I kind of just abandoned it, moved on to other stuff, whatever. And then just a few months ago, it kind of hit me like, I think I was going through, or it reminded me of the lyrics or something. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is how I've been feeling. Like that's so crazy that God would use me 2 years ago to affect me 2 years later in the future.
exactly. Yeah.
And then so it just came full circle. And so I think we have to be cognizant that what we're doing, even though it might not feel right or whatever, that God's blessing that in that moment, and it might eventually turn into something even greater in the future.
For sure. And as I always like to say, there's a reason for the season.
Mm,
There's a reason why a song like comes into your heart or into your mind.
totally.
And when it does come, then it seems like the process is so much easier. It doesn't
Mm,
seem like you have to
oh,
struggle
nailed it. Yeah,
in that entire process. Like when God calls you to go, yeah.
yeah. Which is so weird. Like, and I always take that as an indication for me of like, if I'm struggling through a song, I'm like, well, now's not the time,
Oh,
like
scrap that.
put it aside. Yeah. Maybe in 2 years it'll come back. But
Exactly,
it's so
exactly.
weird. And I think something I've been learning lately as well is like, you can't force it. Like, let's say I'm feeling something and I'm like, oh, I know this is what God wants me to write a song about. And so
Ooh,
I'll start
dangerous
writing it.
territory.
Yeah. I'll start writing and then it doesn't work. And I'm like, what am I thinking? Like just chill.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can attest to that. Like I was telling you before, in this podcast, like I was supposed to start this in 2018
Mm,
and it just didn't come to be. And
Mhm.
then fast forward 2 years later, 2020, and here we are to where it's
Killing it.
like God is just completely taken over.
Mhm.
So also there's a reason for the season for
Definitely.
everything.
And I think
Yeah.
throughout the process, like, you will get little tugs, of like, "Oh, maybe I should," and then you fight it, and then,
Story of my life. Yes. Or I think story of a lot of creators' life, like
Mhm.
that internal struggle and kind of being aware of it, but also it's like the perfect roadmap, like or the perfect guide
Mm.
to your roadmap, the Holy Spirit, and how he prompts you, and how he, like it seems like you're veering off in another direction, and then he'll quickly be like, "No, you need to go left
Mhm.
at
You're like,
this
"What?"
roadmap," and then you're like, "What? It doesn't make any sense." But then looking back, you're like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
I see what you were doing."
It's so wild. I know.
Yeah. So yeah, so you were thinking about putting music out there, and
Mhm.
at that point, did you have a plan, or was it just I'm just working with a friend, we're just gonna make music and we're gonna see where it goes?
Yeah, I think definitely, we just kinda decided to go for it versus having a plan. We actually were on tour together, and we lived in a tour bus, and so we had a lot of free time to work on this. So I think that was kind of our initial motivation, was like, well, if we have time to work on this, why not? So yeah, we didn't really have too much of a plan, other than we knew we were both creatives and we really enjoyed music. And I don't want to say we felt like we were blessed by God, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we felt like God had given us some sort of musical abilities. So we wanted to explore that. And I think that was kind of the first time for me that I really found that passion to explore it. Cause I think before I
Mm.
was very apprehensive. And when I was by myself, it was kind of like, well, maybe I won't know what to do, but it kind of just felt like the right time. And God had said, this is what I want you to try, at least, like, give it a go and see how you go, you know?
Right. And can you talk about what your, I guess, inspiration was for your sound? Because it is a unique sound. And I feel like there's a lot of pulling from different genres, maybe. So can you talk
Mm.
about that?
That is definitely true, and definitely, see, I'm very, I don't want to say anti-genre, but I don't want to be classified under a genre.
Yeah.
And I know that's what everybody says, like, I'm not a genre, but but it's true. Like, I don't want to be put into a box. I just feel like whatever's inspiring me at the moment, I feel like um, is from God, and I feel like that's what I want to explore. Like, I want to continue exploring different things. And so, to describe what the music sounds like to me, I would say it's a form, maybe, of pop, maybe with some R&B influences,
For
potentially,
sure. Yes.
yeah, potentially some sort of hip hop influences as well. Because I mean, I really enjoy those kinds of music, so I think I really pull that in, um, to what I create. But yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to kind of pinpoint what exactly it is.
And what was your music like? What was the style of music that you listened to growing up? Because I
Hmm.
feel like that always will kind of play
Yeah.
into what you gravitate towards later on
Uh-huh.
in life.
Definitely. Well, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people, at least, had kind of that, like, punk phase, growing up. So
Eh, people don't know, I was into punk. Like I
see,
definitely
I feel like
went
everybody
with punk.
secretly
Yes,
did.
absolutely. And I could reel off some bands that people would be like, "Wow,
Really?
okay,
Wow.
that's
No,
different."
in the same
So
way.
definitely like punk and like heavy metal for me. Oh,
Mhm.
I was
Yeah,
totally in that.
definitely had that phase. And then I think I gravitated more towards kind of the hip hop, R&B, some pop, but less mainstream. Kind of like, um, yeah, definitely more like, I don't know. Um, I'm super into, I don't want to say like electronic, but like synthesized elements. Do you know what I'm
Mm,
saying? Like, I
yes.
like the live sounds, but I really enjoy just heavily processed, like, snares and 808s and stuff like that. Just the way you can toy with them just to make it sound is so much fun.
Right. And also when you're just starting out, that's kind of like the perfect like
Hmm.
medium to use because you don't need a guitar. You don't need like a
Definitely.
keyboard. Like you can just have your laptop
Hmm.
and just go with it. So I feel like that's like the perfect way to start in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
And sometimes it feels a little bit like cheating. Like, I mean, I play piano and
Mhm.
I play a couple of things, but it's like I'm not super proficient. So I know some people are like, oh, like real musicians really play them. And it's like, okay, just chill, you know? like,
You're
like,
supposed to have a real keyboard
yeah, it's
and a real
like,
piano, and that's how you're supposed to make your music.
yeah, it's like, come on, like, I get it. Like, and I definitely have so much respect for those people. But so at the same time, like, you still have to have the understanding of music theory and stuff like that. And so it's like, well,
You're all
it is
pulling
what it
from the
is.
same principles, to be honest. Like
Exactly, exactly. We're all working together here to make music. So,
you listen to a lot of different music growing up, and
mhm,
that um kind of shaped what early still. Okay, so can we talk about the name and how the name came to be still?
good
And it's
question.
and it's all capital letters.
Yeah, very interesting. It kind of started for me with the verse like "Be still and know that I am God," because again, it was kind of the apprehension of, well, like, should I do it? Like, if God's calling me, should I do it? And then it was kind of like, well, He is God and He's in control, so like, just be still, you know.
Yes.
And then a second fun meaning was that initially the girl that was in the duo with me, her name was Stacy and my name's Will, so it was Stacy and Will still. but
That is so perfect.
yeah, but I really liked it, and I think it kind of um, it's kind of punchy, and it hopefully it'll stick with you, you know. I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but
for sure.
I think the meaning behind it is important as well, just because it reminds me of how I got started with it. Um, it wasn't with a ton of confidence, and it wasn't um, a trusting in my own understanding and my own gifts. It was relying on God because He is God.
Yeah, and also in that, in you're working with someone and you now have a name and
Mm.
you're putting yourself out there and your music out there. Was there anyone that was kind of like your cheerleader, that aided you and like be like, you know what, just go for it? Because I feel like we
Mhm.
always have our cheerleaders that push us when we can't
Mhm.
push ourselves.
Interesting question. It's hard for me to pinpoint a person exactly, but I think definitely because, like I said, I had been singing all throughout school, and so people knew like I sang and stuff. So I think in my life they'd always been like, well, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this?" You know. So it's hard for me to say just one person, but definitely I think having that encouragement of your peers and your family and stuff really does give you that extra push to go for it. Because I think even though we're hearing from God a lot of times, even not even in situations like this, like we just decide not to listen or we decide to hear what we want to hear, which
Facts. Definitely.
uh,
Or it's like just dealing with the fact that what he's calling you to do seems so big, if that makes sense.
oh yeah.
Like it seems like it's so far beyond you that
Hmm.
even though even though the words that he speaks are for us, it's hard to
Hmm.
believe that they're actually for us, if that
So
makes
true.
sense.
Like, well, it's because we don't have enough confidence in ourselves, you know? Like, we're like, yeah, you might believe in me, but I don't believe in myself. So what's the point, you know?
It's like, I don't know if you have the wrong address, but as far as
Hmm.
what you're calling me to do, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And that has been like the story of my life is
Yeah.
like,
Well,
God, this is not me.
and thinking back actually to what you said before about kind of like what pushed, like what gave you your start. Another thing was actually when I met my co-producer Josh. He he's worked on every song that I put out so far, and having him really help boost my confidence because he's a very talented producer and songwriter and stuff. And so just to have him on board really gave me that extra sense of community.
Mm.
So just to know that, like, again, you're not in it by yourself, and you have someone who's has experience, and they're pushing you to work together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and they also bring something out of you that you can't pull out of yourself.
Oh wow, that's
Like,
real.
they
Yeah.
help you to tap into some levels
Hmm.
that would be hidden
Definitely.
otherwise.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've even learned so many production techniques and stuff from him over time. So yeah, that's very true. I've never thought of it that way.
Mm. So you sing,
Hmm.
you write,
Hmm.
you produce.
Hmm.
Is there anything that I'm missing? Is there anything you don't do?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I play piano as well, but that's about it. But definitely still learning on the production elements. Like, typically what'll happen is, like, I'll write a song, I'll record it. And I mean, I'll have all the production elements in there, and I'll send it off to my friend Josh, and he'll kind of add some tweaks, send it back. I'll be like, oh, I like this, take this away, maybe add this, and then we'll send it back and forth until we get the
Right.
final product.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a learning process, and it's one of my favorite processes because you get to be so creative, and you get
Mm.
to kind of take your vision that you had, give it to someone else, and then through their eyes, see how they see it, and then it just goes back and forth, and it's so fun because it. I mean, you would think at first, like, oh, like, you'd be almost covetous of it because you're like, this is like my project, and I don't want you to ruin it, or I don't,
Exactly.
But
Yes.
at the
Yeah.
same time,
It's like a level of trust that you need.
exactly, exactly. But I feel like over time, I've realized that however it comes out, like, as long as I'm happy with it, like,
Mhm.
it's gonna speak to whoever needs to hear it. So what is the point of being petty, and like, and me and Josh are always on such the same wavelength. Like, it's really worked out well, and I'm glad it brought us into each other's lives because without it,
Yeah.
who knows where still would be.
And that's also like the true meaning of collaborating.
Mm,
It's and also in collaboration, there needs to be compromise.
wow, that's real.
Like,
Yeah.
it can't just be your idea because
Mm.
then it's
What's
just
the point
someone
of
working
collaboration?
under you.
Yeah,
It's not like you're
exactly.
not working together. So compromise within collaboration, I think, is one of the
Mm-hmm.
biggest lessons
Mm-hmm.
that like we could learn or that other people can learn if they're looking to collaborate with others is like be so quick to scrap your own idea if
Mm-hmm.
someone brings something to the table that you never even considered
It's
because
so
they have a
true.
completely different view than you.
Hmm. And who are you
So
to say, like, oh, your idea is the best? Like, it's like,
especially if you go to them for help.
yeah, you go to them and they're like, change it, and you're like, no. It's like, okay,
No,
why'd you come to me?
then you could do it yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So how long have you and Josh been working together? I feel like I don't know if you answered that.
not really. I mean, I talked about he's been there from the beginning, but I can answer
Right.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, Josh and I have been working together since, I guess, 2017, when the first single "Leave" was released. We recorded the vocals and produced the song and sent it over to him, and he was like, "Yeah, definitely, I love the sound. Like, I'm into it. Let's get started." And we had been friends for a little bit before that, um, and it kind of just went from there. Every single demo song I've worked on, really, I've sent to him and kind of got his opinion, but like, hey, what do you think? Like, is this a win? Is this not a win? And he'll give me an honest answer, and we'll go from there. But definitely value having him on the team.
For sure. And okay, so what was the feeling or even the process of writing the first song with you and Stacy and then sending it over for it to be worked on, and then you get the finished product back, and then you're about to release it? Can you talk about that process and maybe the feelings that you were feeling at that time?
Oh my word, it's like a dream come true. Like, you have no idea. It feels like, oh, it's so great because it's your baby that you've worked on, and you're so proud of it, and then it's finally time to, like, get it out there, and that's literally all you can focus on. I remember we
Yeah.
released that song, I think it was like right around Christmas, New Year's, and I was like, I
Merry
don't even
Christmas to you.
I was like, I don't even care about the holidays, which I'm like a huge, like, I love Christmas and stuff, but I was
Mhm.
so focused on. And another thing is, I'm very into, for my work, I actually do a lot of branding and design and stuff like that, and marketing, and so I'm really into like marketing myself.
Which a lot of people aren't. They find
Yeah.
that part very uncomfortable.
Well, keep in mind, I like to market myself as anonymous.
Okay, cool.
I don't like to put my face out there or my name,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I really enjoy just the whole process of creating like promotional videos for the songs and designing I design my own album artworks and stuff like that. I really enjoy that aspect as well. And so it was like around that Christmas time, New Year's, it was like the best time ever because I'm like designing promo videos and like getting all this hype around it, and it was so much fun. But it just the feeling of, and I don't know, it's weird because like listening to the final mix when you get it is amazing, but then once it's like finally distributed to platforms and you listen to it on Apple Music or
Yes.
Spotify, it's like 10 times different. It's like, this is so
So
much better.
different. Yes. Like, I remember when I released the trailer to this
Mm,
podcast, it was only like a minute and 30 seconds.
mhm.
I was so proud of that minute
Yeah,
and 30 seconds.
definitely.
And when I actually saw it on the platforms, I was like, yo,
Best day ever.
no one can tell me anything. I didn't even like record the first episode yet, but I was like, my
This is
trailer
it.
is out there.
This is lit. Yeah. Oh no, I totally
Oh
feel
my
you.
gosh. Okay. What was the story behind Leave?
Mm, really good question. I think I think there's a lot of different influences for it in terms of the lyrics, but I think honestly, for me, the biggest inspiration I had to write it was going back to what we said before about finding that confidence, was kind of just leaving that apprehension in the past, because it's all about like I said, like I won't go back to that. Like I said, like it can be interpreted as an addiction or whatever, but I
Mm,
think for me it was like, I'm not going to go back to the, well, no, I'll get to it in the future, you know? Like this was like the first time that I was like, I really want to go for it. Like I want to just go full send and go in on music and making music for God, you know? So I think like even the chorus, it says like, I've said it once, I've said it twice. I should just take my own advice. Like, you know, like I say, like I want to do this, but I don't. So I leave the apprehension in the past, leave that,
mm,
like just embrace what God is telling you to do. Basically, it's kind of what the inspiration for that song was.
yeah. And in writing that and releasing that at the same
Mhm.
time, was there an area that you saw growth in that process? Because I feel like in every project that we do, or whether it's a song or whether you write something, there's always an area of growth
Mm,
that you see. So what was that for you, if there was something?
mm. That's an interesting question. I think, I mean, definitely, I'm sure there was growth because constantly growing. But I think, let me think. I think for me, one of the biggest points of growth was just because that was the first song that I really fully co-produced, you know?
Mm,
Because before, you know, you're writing melody lines and you'll produce a little something here and there, but to finally have like the full structure of a song was really exciting. Um, and I know I remember thinking like, well, like classic, like, oh, I don't want it to be exactly like the stereotypical structure of a song.
yeah.
So like, I remember like, let's end the song on the pre-chorus. Like, how cool would that be? You know? And so
Different.
what?
Different.
Exactly, right? And so so I think for me it was kind of just stepping out of that comfort zone of like, well, this is what a song is,
Mm.
you know? So you got to make a song like this. But then I was like, well, why though? Like this is your song. Like you can do whatever the heck you
There
want.
is no rule to follow,
Exactly.
like, per se. There is nothing like, there's no written contract that you sign that says, like, you have to it has to
First
go
chorus, first
verse
chorus.
1,
Yeah,
chorus, verse 2, bridge, and then do the chorus
exactly.
again.
It did. So I think that's kind of what I realized was, well, why not make it different? You know, like do whatever you feel led to do. You know, like don't feel like you have to fit into what's popular just to get big, because at the end of
Right.
the day, it's like do what you want to do, and if it's what God wants, He'll bless it.
Exactly. And because also that whatever you produce and whatever you put out there, you're going to have to stand behind. You're going to have
Totally.
to own that.
That's real.
So
Yeah,
don't put out anything that even, 6 months later or a year later, you won't be able to own. I mean,
definitely.
of course, we're always going to go through transitions in life, and we may grow in our thinking and what we think of things, but also there's like a core foundation that we have to
Mhm.
stand on.
But I feel like exactly what you said. Like if you fully stood behind it, and at the time you put it out, you're still going to relate to that because you're going to understand what you were going through at that time.
For sure.
So
For sure.
definitely, that's so true. And I think that's kind of like what I said before, where like I don't want to just put out music just because, like, oh well, it's been a while, I guess it's time to put out a song. Like I want it to really have a meaning to me, and because I feel like when that happens, like that's more how people relate to music.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also it's like when you put something out that God speaks to you about, that song will, like, it'll live with the person. So for example, like there's songs that I still go back to that are like 10 years old. There's
Mhm.
songs that I still go back to that are 5 years old. When God is surrounded in it, it will continue to follow. It will continue to follow a person.
Definitely.
And I feel like now sometimes with music, because it can be done so fast, and because it can be, sometimes there is that pressure to release things very quickly, that it's just we're just being force fed all this stuff
Yeah,
that won't even follow us. Like there's some
exactly.
songs that I'm like came out like 3 months ago and I'm like, oh yeah,
I forgot about that.
I forgot about that.
That's real. That's totally, yeah. Like it has to be transparent and genuine enough for someone to connect to it. Otherwise, I mean, maybe they might be like, "Oh, it's a cool
It
hook.
sounds
Like I like
nice.
that melody line." Exactly. But unless it's true to you, then I think it just doesn't stick around. Like you said.
Yeah, like sounds can only take you so far. And lyrics, though, like I am still the person that will look up lyrics. Like I want to know what you're saying and like see from the start of the song to
Mhm.
the end of the song, like what you're saying. Lyrics
Yeah.
matter. Like
Totally.
you have to back it up with your lyrics. I'm sorry, just sounds will only take you so far.
100% agree.
So let's talk about Rest
Mm.
and talk about how that song came to be and where you were at in your life when you were writing that song.
Yeah, I Rest is interesting because I was at a point in my life where, like I'd mentioned before, I moved around every couple years, and so I was having trouble finding my own identity,
Mm,
who I was, where I was from, just me as a person. And so I think I was very restless. I I didn't. I was searching. I didn't know where to look, things like that. And so that's kind of how Rest came to be, because I was like, well, where can I find rest? And it was in God alone. Like there's no point in searching for anything else. And it's funny because, as I was mentioning before, how songs kind of work together, like, or God uses things over time, I should say. When I wrote Rest, I definitely was truly genuine about what I was saying. I really felt those feelings, and I connected with the lyrics, but I think I kind of only understood it on a surface level. Like, yeah, I'm finding rest in God. Um, but when I was writing Heavy, I was realizing, like, well, what's interesting is the solution to my heart feeling heavy is finding my rest in God. So it's
mm,
almost like it kind of came full circle, and
yeah,
like that, I realized that a song I wrote a year ago was going to impact me again in the future. Like it's just so cool, because I'm not saying I write music to impact people, but it's cool to see when you have an impact on other people. But it's almost cooler to see when God uses that for yourself, if you know what I mean.
absolutely, totally.
So it's so cool to see that God spoke to me through my own song. And like, I'm not saying that like in vanity. I just think it's cool because he uses everything for his glory, and he gives creative abilities to express that. So I was able to use what I wrote to speak to myself. It was just another way to like connect with him, you know?
Mm, yeah, and I feel like, so to piggyback what you just said,
Hmm.
um, in doing this podcast, like it's been probably some of the greatest therapy that I've ever had.
Mm, that's so cool.
And just like having these type of conversations, and a lot of the conversations like aren't even like recorded. We're
Yeah.
just like chatting, really. And it's like how God uses those situations to like shed light
Mhm.
on things,
Totally.
but also like encourage us, and to know like, hey, like I feel your struggles. We're not alone
Definitely.
in that.
I think our generation especially really craves that community.
Oh, come on.
And I think that we get that false sense of community on social media. Um, and I think you're totally right. Like these even just these sessions are very therapeutic because it's like we trust that there's other people out there that are feeling and thinking the same way we are, but then you see people being quote unquote fake on social media, you know, and it's like, well, maybe I'm truly alone, you know?
Mm,
I think that kind of actually had an impact on my song Heavy. It's kind of just like why, like the lyrics say like, um, tell me why I'm living with this uncertainty. Like, why do I hang on everything that burdens me? You know,
mm,
like why do I let it keep affecting me? And I think it is partially like we were talking about with social media. Like you go back to it over and over, and I don't know, you just kind of get lost in this loop. Um,
yes, the endless scrolling
yes.
and the endless cycle that it provides. I am guilty as
Mhm.
anyone else. I will speak for myself. There are moments where, or times that I'm like, I'm literally gonna check this one thing because someone like actually has sent me something, right? And then I'm like, I'm gonna check that one thing. It'll be 2 seconds. And then it's 10 minutes later. And
Still
I've
scrolling.
gone into the cycle of the endless scrolling.
Totally.
Instagram is I'm telling you, they are smart with
Go
the
back in.
endless
Yeah.
scrolling. They knew what they were
Yeah, it's
doing.
brutal.
So yeah, there's something that you said that that I want to like expand on or talk about
Totally.
more. It's like community.
Mm,
And what has your experience been with the Christian creative space? Because I feel like it's very unique.
mm. That's a great question. I think for me, I mean, I'm definitely just kind of getting started. Even though I've been releasing music for a few years, I'm definitely still a baby. And I think it's been very encouraging for me to see. I truly think that our generation is in a revival. Like it's insane. I think even seeing like celebrities and stuff that are openly professing Christ, it's crazy. Like that never would have happened before. And I think it's really cool that we've cultivated this community of young Christian creatives. And I mean, even people like Tep from Bless Music and stuff like that have
Shout
really,
out.
yeah, have really like sparked that, I think. And I think, I don't know, I feel, and I'm no shade to older generations, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like our generation is very good at communicating with others that maybe don't have the same beliefs or whatever, but at the same time, staying strong in what we believe and our convictions and stuff. You know what I mean?
Totally. Totally. And I feel like also it's um like what you said, we are good in communicating like
Mhm.
like within ourselves about like what we're doing and what we're excited about, but I feel like it's kind of like once it stops there,
Mhm.
then we're not so good with like
Yeah.
just checking in and being like, how are you? Like
Mhm.
it's not because you have something that I need or something
Mhm.
like, or it's
That's
not because
real.
that you like released a song that I'm like talking with you,
Mhm.
but I
It's just
feel
the
like we
greatest
need to be
creative.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to be better with just
Mhm.
like, how are you doing?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because I think, especially, I mean, right now with this quarantine and stuff, like it's been a lot of isolation, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
definitely that's a very good point.
yeah. I mean, like the whole quarantine thing has kind of, I think, opened a lot of people's eyes that we need to slow down a little bit and maybe shift our thinking and shift our kind of what we place or how we place things in our life.
Mm.
And again, like conversations matter and friendships matter,
I mean, we
and
take all that for granted,
we
like
totally do.
100%. Like just knowing, just living in isolation for a while is like, well, I wish I could do something trivial, like, like
I
go.
I actually miss, like, okay, so there's certain people that I associate with seeing at church, for
Mhm,
example. And it's not to say that we don't hang out outside of church, but there's like certain people that I greet a certain way. There's certain people that I like. There's certain things that we just do when we're at church.
mhm.
So then to not have that, I was like,
There's this hole.
this big hole that I'm like, I don't
Oh,
know when we're going back, right?
yeah.
So that part has been hard, but also it's made me appreciate those
Mhm.
friendships a lot more.
No,
So,
totally. Yeah, and going back to, like, what we were talking about before with kind of taking that leap and jumping in, I think another thing is that I kind of a lot of time I mean, I'm definitely a big worrier, and I
mm,
think that I I struggle with feeling like I make the right decisions sometimes, um, when at the end of the day, I feel like whatever decision you make is what it is, like it's God's plan for your life. But
yeah.
I know for me, one thing that's really been encouraging is Philippians 4:6-7, where it says, "Don't worry about anything, instead pray about everything."
Mm,
Um, I know for me, like just like Paul's reminding us that there's no use in worrying, just give it to God because obviously He's in control. And a lot of
absolutely.
times, like that's hard to remember, like when you're faced with adversity, but like because when you struggle with feeling like you're making the wrong decisions all the time, like I just let that burden me, for a while. Like,
Mm,
what's the point? Like, it's happened. Whatever's happened happened, and so just take it to God. You know what I mean?
yeah. And has there ever been a song that you were about to release
Mm,
and God was like, "No."
mm.
Like the song was finished, produced, mixed, everything.
You know what's crazy? Is literally that's what has happened to me in the past few months. Like that's so wild.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm working on this new song now, and it was actually like very close to finished around the same time Heavy was.
Mm,
It was just directly after that. And I kind of paused for a second and I was like I'm not happy with this. Do you know what I'm saying?
mm.
Like something's not right. So I pulled the plug a little bit and I've completely reworked it since then, and I'm so much happier with it now. Like, and I reworked everything, like the production elements, the melody
From
line, the
top to
lyric.
bottom.
Yeah, like a few things stayed the same, but not really. And I'm really liking the direction it's in now, and I feel like it's a lot. I don't know. It's like we said before, like when it feels right, like it flows so much better and God's blessing
Yeah.
it. And I feel like that's what's happening now. So it's so like, I don't want to say I'm proud of myself, but I'm proud that I listened to God
Yes.
and waiting,
Yes.
like,
And to not rush, like there's um there's order to everything.
mm,
And I feel like a lot of times we just rush through things instead of
mhm,
just like, let's just take our time. Let's just take a step back, let it
that's real.
breathe,
Like there's no
let it
rush.
sit.
Yeah.
And like so like whoever is listening doesn't know, but I will let a podcast episode sit for like 3 days
Mm,
before I like officially put it out there, because I need to know that I can actually put it out there, like, if that makes sense. Like, I
oh
need
yeah,
that peace and that assurance
that's so smart.
that this episode is in the right season and in the right time.
Hmm.
So,
That's awesome.
word to the wise, whatever you do, just take time to let it breathe. Take time to let whatever project you're working on just rest
Definitely.
for a bit. So, yeah, I love that.
Mm,
That's awesome. Um, there's something that I wanna jump back into.
sure.
It's community. And what was it like for you when, for example, like Blessed
Mhm.
posted your songs? I believe it was Lost.
Yeah, it was Lost. Yep.
And what was that experience like and the whole like community kind of like rallying around your song?
Oh, it was so cool. I mean, again, we talked about how it was like it's such a cool feeling to have your product out there, like your
Yeah.
song, your podcast, whatever. But to know that people are receiving it and it's blessing them is 10 times cooler because it just feels like validated and it feels like this is like there was a purpose behind what I was feeling and
Yes.
it's helping other people, like it's so cool to know that God's given you a gift and you can use that and your creative abilities and what even the dark things you're feeling or whatever
Mm,
to help other people. Like that is when you think about it, it's pretty crazy. Like you would think that typically like, oh, like if you're feeling a certain way, God's not going to bless that. You know what I mean? But the
right.
fact that you can turn those moments into relatable moments to build that community further is so cool. Like boggles my mind.
Yeah, and it's also cool and um in the fact that there are no borders.
Mm,
Like just as how there's no borders and when it comes to the Holy Spirit, like the Holy Spirit can meet you anywhere. Like
so
and that's
true.
why also in this whole quarantine season that we've been in, it reinforces the fact that God is not confined to a building. Like
Mm,
God is everywhere and he can meet us where we're at in our homes. And I feel like music has that same capability as well, is that it can meet someone who is in China or it can meet someone who is in
definitely.
Africa.
That's
Like you
so
can
real.
touch someone with your music and have them be encouraged by it and
Mhm.
you not even be in this on the same continent.
It's amazing. I know, like, even, like, if you look at, like, Spotify analytics and stuff, you can see where people are listening,
It's
and
crazy.
it's insane, and I'm like, honestly, like, I haven't even put a ton of effort into what I do. Like I said, I enjoy, like, making promos and stuff, but I haven't really done any paid advertising.
Yeah.
I haven't really reached out to big, like, corporations or anything like that. Like, it's pretty much organic,
Mm.
and I'll go years without posting. And so it's just so cool to continually see. Like I'll get on, I'll check it, and it'll be like people in Singapore and Australia, and you know what I mean. It's like what?
Yeah.
Like how is God? Like God's using that. It's so cool. Like blows my mind.
Yeah. Which like again is like there's no borders to our
Definitely,
like creative space.
I love it.
It's across the world,
Yep.
which is so cool.
hmm
Um
And I think you can also use that as an encouragement to other people
mm,
who are apprehensive or whatever. Like if God's calling you to do it, go for it because what's the worst that can happen? B, like, if you enjoy it, embrace it, you know?
and within that, are you open or has an opportunity come up where someone within the creative space has reached out to you as far as like working on a project? Is that something that you are willing to do or kind of something that you're like, I'll wait on that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if anyone's um, interested in collaborating on anything, I think that'd be so cool. I mean, it would depend on the project,
Yeah.
definitely, but always open to chat about it. I think that's so cool. And I have talked a little bit to a few other Christian artists just here and there, kind of like, oh, that'd be cool. And I definitely mean that. And I think like the aspect of community is so important to build that and to use each other's creative talents and our perspectives to continue to create. I think that's what fosters this community.
Mm. So true. So true. So you have released Heavy
hmm
in 2020. Um, is there anything that we can expect on the horizon, or is it let's just see where it goes. Let's just see where God takes us.
well, that one I was just mentioning before, that's been reworked. I am still working on it. Um, I would hope that it could be released within 2020. So yeah, definitely keep your eyes out for that. I'm thinking hopefully in the next 6 months, probably less, but fingers crossed. We'll see. We'll see where it goes.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. No
Yeah.
promises, but
Yeah. And do you ever want to release an album? Is that something that you want to do? Because I feel like in this day and age, a lot of people are like, I'm okay with putting out a single.
hmm
Not everyone wants to make an album or even an EP.
hmm that's a great question. I think an album would be awesome. I think definitely that's a dream. But it goes back to the same thing of I'm half a perfectionist and half I don't just want to put stuff out there. So I think it would be a long process, but I think potentially if the singles continued to do well and maybe I gained some more traction, I would be able to potentially put more time or effort into writing and producing. So I think definitely, I think that would be so cool. And I maybe a couple songs, but I don't want to be the person who releases an album and they have 5 of their old singles on there, like no shade to people who do that, but it's like people are like upset.
We don't want to see half of your album have half of your old singles. Like as much as we love
Fair
your
enough.
music,
I get it.
I can go on your Spotify and play your old stuff if I wanted to. So
Get this new stuff is what we want.
give us some new stuff and we'll be happy. Yeah, it's totally fine. So how can people connect with you and how can people connect with your music? Let them.
Definitely. So I would say the best way to connect with me would just be to reach out on Instagram. It's at We Are Still Music. Yeah, definitely just reach out at any point. It doesn't matter if you're a musician or just someone who enjoys the music. Just it's so
Someone
great.
like me who literally
Yeah,
just
exactly. It's so cool just to have that community and that connection in our generation. So or older generations, if you want to reach out, down to talk to you as well. But I think it is really cool and important to have that connection. So totally reach out. And if you are a musician, definitely reach out as well. I'm always available. I might not be super active, like I said before. Kind of try to hold back on the social media posting and stuff like that. So, but I'll always be active if you want to chat. So definitely reach out. And yeah, again, definitely listen to the newest single that came out, Heavy. And I'd love to hear what you think or any ideas.
And also like, sorry, that style, like the style of Heavy and just like the flow of it was so different. Like I wasn't expecting that.
Okay.
So that was like,
That's cool. I really appreciate
yeah,
that.
it was really cool. It was
Well,
really cool to listen.
I think, yeah, that's important because I I think one thing I'm apprehensive of is I don't want to have things sound the same. So I really, really appreciate that. And like I even know even this new one I'm working on, I sent it to Josh, my co-producer, and I was like, does this sound too much like Heavy? And he's like, no, I don't think so at all. And I was like, oh, sweet.
Mm.
So we're golden.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
I
I was
appreciate
yeah, I heard it and I was like, oh,
that.
okay. Like it's a different groove, but it's a groove that I can just, yeah, I can get with.
As long as you can
So
get with it, that's all that counts.
that's all that matters. Wow. Awesome. So you heard it first. You heard it here. Be sure to connect with Will from Still. And I promised myself I wasn't going to say it like that. Will from Still.
Hey, you're spitting right
Yeah.
over there.
Yeah. Right? I
Uh,
got all these hidden talents. Don't even know of yet. But yes, thank you so much for doing this.
oh, thank you for having me. This was awesome. I really, really appreciated it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Lampstand Chronicles. And again, thank you to Will for joining me on this episode. If you can't already tell, I've been having so much fun with these recordings. They've been awesome. Let's all continue to support independent artists who are making music for us to enjoy. You can like their music, add them to your playlists, but let's all continue to push Christian music to the forefront of the music scene. Be sure to connect with me on Instagram. The show's page is at The Lampstand Chronicles, and my personal page is at Rocky Saint Amand. And if there's someone you'd like to see on the show, send me a message and let me know. Hopefully we can make that happen. Don't forget to subscribe to The Lampstand Chronicles, which is available on all major streaming platforms. And new episodes come out every second Thursday. And in whatever you do, may your light shine bright. Take care, everyone.